gathering. So just thank you to everyone who is here tonight. Thanks for your time and coming to our quarterly meetings. We really appreciate having the chance to hear from you, being able to share information with families and people with disabilities. Um, we we continue to work to make these meetings more accessible to those who speak other languages. So if you'd like to try the closed captioning in another language, you can right click on the closed caption box on the bottom right of the screen. A menu will pop up, so then click on Translate into English. A box will open at the top of your screen where you can choose what language you would like the captioning translated into. We also have someone here to help translate questions for Spanish speakers. Before we get started, we want to remind you that this meeting is being recorded and it will be available Friday on the DSPD website under the Individuals and Families tab, and then the Be Informed and Be Involved heading. And just please mute yourselves and type any questions into the chat box as we get to questions. You can raise your hand if that's a way you need to do it, but in the interim, please stay muted so that we avoid getting that feedback. I'm going to give some time to Nadia to do a translation of our introduction.
Thank you, Angie. Buenas noches, bienvenidos a nuestra reunión familiar y autodefensa. Esta reunión está siendo grabada, así que le pedimos que por favor ponga su micrófono en mudo. La grabación puede encontrarla el próximo viernes en nuestra página del internet. Para verla puede ir a dspd.utah.gov, luego presione en Individuals and Families, Resources, and Be Informed and Be Involved. Presione en Family and Self-Advocate, donde puede encontrar la grabación de la última reunión, así como reuniones pasadas. Estamos haciendo todo lo posible para tener esta presentación en otros idiomas, pero por ahora solo tenemos disponibles los subtítulos. Si desea usarlos en español, siga lo siguiente. Presione en el círculo que tiene los 3 puntitos, presione la cajita debajo con las 2 mayúsculas C, presione la cajita de la derecha que dice English Caption Settings, va a salir otra caja en el medio de la pantalla, presione la opción Translated Captions y verifique que se ponga en azul. Presione la cajita que está debajo y escoja el idioma en el que desee que estén los subtítulos. En este caso, seleccione Spanish. Presione la X en la esquina de arriba y los subtítulos aparecerán en español cuando alguna persona esté hablando. Si tiene alguna pregunta, a la mano derecha, en la parte de abajo, hay un cuadrado con líneas, como si fuera que alguien está hablando. Presiónelo y saldrá una segunda pantalla que dice In-Call Messages, en el cual usted puede escribir su pregunta. En la parte de abajo hay una línea que dice Send a Message to Everyone. Ahí usted puede escribir su pregunta en español y yo le ayudaré a traducirlo. Luego presione la flecha para que podamos verla. También puede hacer preguntas en voz alta, solo presione el círculo que tiene la manito. Le haremos saber cuando puede hablar. No se olvide de presionar el micrófono para que la podamos escuchar. Si desea, puede mandar sus preguntas por correo electrónico antes o después de la reunión a dspdinfo@utah.gov en español. Estaré presente y disponible durante toda la presentación en caso que tenga preguntas. Gracias. Back to you, Angie.
Thank you, Nadia. Let's go ahead and go over the agenda for today so you know what's coming. We'll start with some announcements. Then we'll go over staff changes that we've had, give some legislative updates related to caregiver compensation, coming off the waiting list, temporary services for those on the waiting list. We have a person-centered planning training, and then we'll have some community resources shared by the Parent Center and our open question and answer time. So for our announcements, the Institute for Disability Research Policy and Practice, which is at Utah State University, is doing a survey. This survey is about sexuality, relationships, and people with disabilities. They're hoping for responses from this survey from adults with a disability, family members, or service providers. So we'll share the survey link in the chat if you're interested in taking it. We're also currently in the process of working to redo the DSPD website. We want to make sure our website is accessible and user-friendly for everyone who uses it. We have a survey you can take to let us know about your experience using our website, what you like, and where there's room for improvement. So we're going to put that in the chat, and we would really appreciate your feedback. We really want this to make sense for everyone who's accessing it. Circle of Friends is a recreational and social program developed for people with multiple disabilities and some degree of hearing loss. Their goal is to help support opportunities to develop independent living and social skills, and help people participate actively in community life and decrease isolation by socializing with others who use sign language while having fun. You can learn more about Circle of Friends on their website, and we'll go ahead and post their link in the chat as well. Also, we have a pilot project to gather feedback on people's experience during the person-centered planning process. We will be reaching out to people to find out how their meeting went. You may be contacted via email or mail to ask for your participation. Also, if you're interested in participating and no one has reached out to you, you can contact us directly at the PCP pilot project at utah.gov. We'll put that in the link as well. Finally, in our announcements, we wanted to let you know that we have directed support coordinators that to resume in-person visits. So just anticipate seeing people in person. Next, we'll go ahead and go over our staffing changes. We have a couple of new staff on our intake and waiting list team. They're Anna Dees and Sandra Salazar Hernandez. We're really excited to have them joining us. They're the teams this is the team that talks to people as they're applying for services and does the updates on needs assessments while people are waiting. So they're potentially people you would be talking to. Heidi Johnson is on our accounting and budget team, as well as Tenzin Sopa. Now, they may not be people you directly engage with as much, but we definitely find their roles critical in making sure we balance our budget. We're able to track and account for everything, demonstrate our accountability. They're really critical members of our team, and we're excited to have them too. Amanda Marine has joined our contracts team, which gets all of our contracts in place, whether they're our ongoing for direct services, as well as our temporary one-time pilot project type of contracts. Such a critical position for us so that we can continuously evaluate our services, try to make sure they're responsive to people's needs, and adapt things as needed. Chad Midgley has been here for a long time. You may have engaged with him. He's done a lot of our reports, has put together a lot of things in the reports portal for our contractors. He's now in a new role as our business analyst supervisor. Very talented, really good at project management, planning. So we're excited to have him in that role. And finally, we have Brianna Salazar as well. She is on our waitlist support team, which is the team who is supporting people with their one-time services while they're on the waiting list. On our legislative updates, with caregiver compensation, this session, the legislature approved ongoing funding for caregiver compensation for the DSPD services. We're still in the process of figuring out the details of how the program will work going forward. We know that without Appendix K, to to have it in our waivers as an ongoing service. We know there are some changes we're going to have to make. We're going to need to change and update our rule. We're going to have to amend our waivers so that it's an allowable option under the waivers. And we know we have to define extraordinary care. And just part of amending our waivers is getting that approval for them. So CMS will review anything we propose, approve it, or send back a request for changes or more information as we work through this. We wanted input from families, individuals, support coordinators, and providers as we make decisions about how caregiver comps looks going forward. And many of you filled out a survey about caregiver compensation earlier this year, so thank you for doing that. So a couple of things that survey showed is that with caregiver compensation, it increased quality of life for caregivers and individuals receiving services. It also demonstrated that it lowers stress for families and decreases the financial burden. We've also heard recently from many families who like using the provider model for caregiver comp. And we're taking this feedback into consideration as we're planning as well. While we don't have all of the details to share with you about the changes, we are hoping to implement the changes by November 1st of 2023. So we'll continue to communicate with you via email and in these meetings as we have more information to share. And just keep in mind that the structure of the program could change. One final thing, we get a lot of questions asking for like tax advice. So we just cannot give tax advice about caregiver compensation. Please talk to your tax professional if you have questions there. I'm going to give time to Jamie Douglas to talk about people coming off the waiting list and waiting list services.
Hi, everybody. The Utah legislature included $3.6 million to bring people off of the DSPD waiting list. We will be bringing in around 19 people each month throughout the entire fiscal year. Funding will be reviewed throughout the year to make sure that we stay within the amount the legislature gave us for waitlist funding. The first group will start receiving their services in July. If you have questions about this, you can work with your waiting list caseworker. If you don't know who that is, you can reach out and call our intake line or email us at dspdinfo@utah.gov. We do have a couple temporary funding programs that we'll be running this year. We'll be able to serve around 1,400 individuals. The funding is limited and not everyone on the waiting list will receive the funding. So the three different programs, the services for people on the waiting list, people will be selected to receive these services based on need. You don't need to apply to receive those services. We will contact you if you're eligible to receive any of the services for the programs that we'll be running. So the three groups, we've got one that's going to be respite only. That will be 8 hours of respite per week for 1 year. That'll serve around 370 people. We'll start reaching out to families in June or July about this program. We still have the American Rescue Plan Act funding. The first round we started in October. It will end in on June 30th. The second round will start in July and will run through June of 2024. So temporary services that you could get would be assistive technology, behavior supports, transportation, caregiver compensation, and respite are also included. We'll start reaching out to people who qualify for this program in June and July as well. So the last program that we have running right now is from April 1st to June 30th. We are able to serve about 375 people, and we've already contacted people that have received this funding. We've started those plans.
Thank you, Jamie. Now we're going to give some time to Bryn Peterson and Lisa Wade. They're going to do a person-centered planning training.
Thanks, Angie. It's great to be with you here tonight. We're excited to share some person-centered planning tools and ideas people and services can use and what they can expect from their support team, as well as ways people waiting for services can access those same resources. We're sharing similar information that you might see today with support coordinators, with staff and providers and others. First of all, we share this information to improve in the areas we need to, but also making sure we continue what's already person-centered and continue what's already working to support you and your family in the way you want. There are 5 competencies, or a better word for that would be 5 skills that people supporting you or your family member should use when starting person-centered planning. We'll talk about each of these skills in this meeting and upcoming meetings, and we'll add a link to a document that describes all 5 skills in the chat. Today, though, we're just going to talk about that first one, or that person-centered planning should be strengths-based, it should be culturally informed, and focus on the whole person. We shared the link there. Okay, we'll just go right into it. Person-centered planning recognizes that any person can grow, change, and make decisions on their own and work towards the goal they choose. Person-centered planning focuses on living that vision of a good life. So all the activities should always be focused on understanding what you or your family member want and understanding what a full life looks like for you, not just that disability or diagnosis. The skill also talks about planning that is shaped by the individual's culture and identity. So good person-centered planning should respect you and your family's values, beliefs, customs, and traditions. We say that because we hope you feel free to speak with and educate support coordinators, providers, and others on your family's beliefs, values, and customs, really so they can better help you. Without this information and understanding, it can be hard at times to connect with and trust support coordinators and staff to help you in the way that you want. We have a few videos we would like to share with you. They are interviews of people who have gone through this person-centered planning approach and also those that support them. There are many short videos that you can view on your own time. We'll put a link to all those videos in the chat, and we have just one to share with you today that's connected to this skill that we're talking about. You'll see in a second, her name is Miso, and I will share my screen to get that started. Thank you. Let me know if you can hear this.
My name is Miso Kwak. I use she, her pronouns. I am a blind Korean American woman, and my experience with person-centered practices and my thoughts on that have been informed both by my personal lived experience as a disabled person and also professionally, having worked as a project coordinator for the National Center on Advancing Person-Centered Practices and Systems, also known as NCAPS, as well as my experience of teaching blind youth. I think my culture is certainly an important part of who I am. One, as a Korean American, I think I hold on to many parts of what my experience has been like growing up in a Korean household, and also certainly shaped by the experience of moving to the United States in my early adolescence. Also, I would argue that disability is a part of my culture. And so having been blind since birth, blind community has been a big part of my life growing up and thinking about my own identity and just my place in the world. So I think when we think about culture, there are multiple facets. in my case, ethnicity, immigration experience, disability experience, and so on. In terms of person-centered practices, I think this was not very apparent to me until I started working at NCAPS, in large part because this was not a jargon or vocabulary that was introduced to me until then. And I think part of that is because in Korean language and culture, it's rather awkward to say it. Having conversation with my parents about my job, I had to do some studying to explain that, but I think it was very initially unnatural to talk about this with my family in Korean language. And I think it's somehow almost counterintuitive. Korean culture and just ways of being is more collectivistic and more family oriented, more community oriented than quote unquote Western or American ways of life and thinking. Once I learned about it through my job and learned the kind of lingos that are often used in person-centered practice circles, it made sense because I think my parents emphasized being able to have self-determined life. To kind of merge this together, I think there is almost clash between my cultural norm and this notion of person-centered practices. One, because of the language, going back to that, and two, just ways of thinking. And I think even for my family,
We lost sound, Bryn.
Yeah, I was muted. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
We just lost Miso for whatever reason.
All right. We have the link in the chat. We've lost that. I was muted in the middle of that presentation. I'm not sure how that happened, but we wanted to share that one with you specifically, partially because it was shorter and we could fit it into this presentation. There's quite a few others that talk about many person-centered planning experiences that are connected to culture, to values and beliefs, various identities, and how that impacts that person's life in a positive way. So I urge you to go take a look at those videos and see how helpful they are. We'll continue talking about this concept of being focused on that whole person. So when meaning the Division of Services with Disabilities, talk to staff, support coordinators, and providers about person-centered planning, we ask them to take the time to learn about the person's culture and language. Your support team will benefit from learning from you, and I think that's why we're bringing that up. We encourage and hope you feel free to discuss and educate your support team members and others about your unique language and culture. To be strengths-based, culturally informed, and focused on that whole person means also that we're presuming competence in everyone. Competence means each person has those strengths, those skills, and those abilities. The focus is always to start out believing that a person is capable, and if they choose, believing that that person can live independently, work in their community, and hold a valuable role in their community as much as they want to, and with as much support as they need. Okay, so if person-centered planning, we're just going to continue here. If person-centered planning is focused on strengths and interests of the person, that also means the steps should recognize each person for their uniqueness and the value they bring. Your support team should also start with what each person can do or you can do, applying your skills, interests, and passions in ways that benefit your community. Also starting with what the person can do leaves that room for big or small, that room for big or small growth and improvement. We have a few person-centered planning tools we'd like to show you today that are examples of this principle. They're going to focus on strengths and understanding you and your family member as a whole person, really getting at what that full life looks like for you. We're going to focus on culture, language, values, and beliefs, hopefully in those examples. The two tools we want to talk about today are the Life Domain Vision tool and the Good Day, Bad Day tool. And I'll hand it over to Lisa to talk about what those tools are and how to use them.
Thank you, Bryn. My name's Lisa Wade, and Bryn and I work on the Employment, Person-Centered Planning, and Community Inclusion team at the Division of Services for People with Disabilities. And I wanted to talk to you about the Life Domain Vision tool. Uses the idea of a domain or an area of your life so that you will talk about a person's whole life and not just focus on one or two areas. There are 6 domains in this tool, including daily life and employment, social and spirituality, advocacy and engagement, healthy living. So it helps you to think about a person's whole life. And you and your family, if you are receiving services, can expect some conversations to occur with your support coordinator and others in each of those 6 areas during or before your yearly person-centered planning meetings. But anyone can use these tools, whether or not you're receiving services. Great for people on the wait list, great for people who don't have disabilities as well. It's really just about having a conversation about what you want in your life. We're going to put a link in the chat so you can access a copy of the tool. It's not possible if we put it on a slide that you'd be able to read any of it, but you can go follow that link and see what a blank version of the tool looks like. It includes a bunch of questions in each of the domain areas, and we could not share all of the examples on our slide, but we chose a few that you might see about having a good life based on culture, beliefs, values, and language, etc. So to use this tool, you just go through each of the domain areas that you want to discuss, and maybe you need an explanation of what that domain includes, and the tool includes a description or explanation of that. And then with each domain, there's an area on the tool that you can write down what your vision of the future is. And I like this part of the tool that it has a column for your priorities, because you don't want to work on everything all at once. You can pick one thing that you want to work on or 2 things that you want to work on, the things that are the highest priority right now. And, of course, your priorities can change depending on what's happening in your life. The tool can be used separately for the person that's receiving services or the individual with a disability and their family. And then it's great to bring the 2 versions together to see where you align, but also to have conversations about the areas that you might disagree in. Some of you may think, well, my loved one does not use words to communicate or doesn't understand these concepts. But you might be amazed if you gave them an opportunity to share what's important to them, that you might be able to get some great information from them if you could figure out a way to get them to share that. That's the tricky part, but we have some tools that can also help with that. If you have any questions about how to use this tool, you can reach out to our team, and we'll put the email in the chat, and we're happy to help walk you through using these tools. The other tool I would like to talk to you about today is the Good Day, Bad Day tool. And this is a tool that you can use to learn what is important to each person, not just what's important for each person. It's a super easy person-centered planning tool to use. It has a lot of questions on it to help you figure out what makes a good day or a bad day for yourself or other individuals. But some questions you might hear are, tell me about a happy day. Tell me about a sad day. What makes you excited? What bothers you? Can you tell me about the times you have the most fun? Who are you with? What are you doing? Where are you? Using this tool is a great way for you and your family to communicate what's important to you and how you want to be supported, how you want people to communicate and interact with you. It's a good starting point for conversations and hopefully leads to other discussions and other person-centered planning tools. If we look at this tool thinking about culture and identity, maybe you and your family could fill one out as to what a good day or a bad day looks like independently, and then again compare your answers. We've even done it as a team. What makes a good day at work versus a bad day at work? As a reminder, person-centered planning tools like this are helpful when people have services that they're receiving from DSPD, or if they're waiting for services. We actually have trainings done specifically for families on the wait list. It's a 5-part webinar series talking about person-centered planning tools, and it's available on our website. And I think that link is going to be shared in the chat for you. But again, you're always welcome to reach out to our team. We can set up a time to talk to you and help you walk through using some of these tools. So to summarize person-centered planning that is strengths-based, educated by culture, values, beliefs, and traditions, and that understands that each person is whole and competent, with this quote from Christopher Reeve that I always associate with Superman. He said, "So many of our dreams at first seem impossible, then they seem improbable, and then when we summon the will, they become inevitable." And that to me is a great quote to remind us to not place limits on any person, but to believe in their capabilities, believe in their strengths, and keeping in mind to look beyond the diagnosis, to look beyond the disabilities, and keep the expectation high and equal to their peers. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Angie. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks, Bryn. Now we're going to give time to Jenny Dopp with the Utah Parent Center to give us a presentation. They're really great partners, so we're excited to have her with us tonight. Jenny.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Let me just switch screens here. You'll have to let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, I can see it clearly.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I presented this earlier today, and we have this brand new workbook or guidebook for all of you to help you understand home and community-based services. But I'm switching it up a little bit tonight, and I tried to decompress or compress the book down into some slides for you. And then I'm also going to put the link to this resource guide in the chat when I'm done, and I would love your feedback on it. I would love parent perspective, provider, support coordinator perspective, DSPD staff perspective if you haven't seen it already. So we'll get started. I'll just take just a few minutes here. So I'm Jenny Dopp, and I work with the Utah Parent Center, and I have a few responsibilities there. I'm a special projects coordinator. And so I work on Transition University. So if you have youth who are transitioning to adulthood, ages 14 to 22, 26, and they need support in finding resources and understanding how to prepare for adulthood, I'm your gal. So reach out to the Utah Parent Center and ask for Jenny. And then I also have been working on this guidebook for you. And what we've tried to do is pull together all of the waiver information. So from the point of time when you get on the wait list, or when you're coming off of the wait list and into waiver services, when you are assigned a certain waiver, when you're trying to find a support coordinator. Let's say you've been in waiver services for 10 years, but you still have questions on what if I want to change my support coordinator? All of those things, we try to cover it in the booklet. So I wanted to highlight just a couple of things for you tonight. But first, before I do that, I just wanted to give a little plug to the Family to Family network that the Utah Parent Center runs. And these are networks throughout the state of Utah that help people who are on the DSPD waiting list receive support while they're on the waiting list. And if you've already been funded, or if you're not, just if you need any support at all, we provide activities and also training resources and information. So you'll see that we have several areas that are represented, and then we also have a few areas that need a co-leader. So if you want a great opportunity, reach out to us and we'll tell you how to get connected. So this is a cover to our picture of the book. And like I said, we go through all of the things. So waivers are very nuanced. There's a lot that goes into them. A lot of the people on this call are already familiar with waivers and how they work and how it benefits your family. But this book really, it does a deep dive on every single topic. So we start out with this table of contents, and you'll see a little legend tool next to each different area. And because the book is about 102, 104 pages, we didn't want you to get lost. So that little legend will help you stay in a certain area that you're interested in, whether it's focusing on the waiver section with DSPD, or maybe you want to jump to the support coordinator section. Those little legend marks will help guide you. We also talk about the basic language. I know when you first came off the wait list and you received that call from the DSPD transition coordinator, it was probably also new to you. You were so excited to finally be off the wait list, but you needed some training and some information, like what does SAS stand for? What's an SCE? What is a setting? What constitutes a provider? And really try to break that down for families. And the language in this publication is directed to the individual with a disability. So as you're reading it, just remember it's talking to the person with a disability. There's a lot of people who are in waiver services that are self-advocates. So if you're a caregiver, just keep that in mind as you're reading through the booklet. We also started with the looking at the past and where we've been, so that we can understand where we're going. For instance, we start out with the Katie Beckett waiver or the Olmstead decision. I know that when Jackson, my son, who's now 22, was diagnosed, and he was the first in Utah that had a chromosome duplication, I just was like this mama bear that was ready to go and do all the things for Jackson. And it was really important for me in my journey to understand all of these parents who'd paved the way for me. And that's what we've done in this booklet, is outline all of this legislation and all of these bills and IDEA and the Olmstead decision and all of these things that have helped get us to the point of where we are today. But as caregivers, you can learn how to be a better advocate for your loved one and continue this work, because we're never done. There's always more that we can be doing to help support our loved ones. Okay, so the main idea behind this booklet, if you can believe this, was just to outline the settings rule and person-centered support planning. And it kind of grew from that, because everything is so connected in this world. We really wanted families to understand some of these things that are more complicated. And as a lot of you know, in 2014, the settings rule was established. And the main goal for that is so that people can have more choice, and that they can identify and have control over how they spend their day, where they live, who they live with, how they earn their money. And a lot of the language might be hard to understand. So what we've done is we've kind of dissected it, and we list all of the 12 guidelines or requirements in the settings rule. And then we also have this FAQ page, or frequently asked questions page, that really takes a deep dive and shows you how the settings rule applies to your situation and your scenario in your life, so that you can have more input and more control over what your life looks like. And by working with your support coordinator, you can have really rich, robust conversations about how this might apply to you. The next, the next part of the book is breaking down the waivers. There's several waivers in the home and community-based services system. And so we take each waiver and we do a deep dive on it. We talk about what are the requirements for it, what benefits do you receive from this waiver, what are some of the limitations. And you can use this tool to have really great conversations with your support coordinator, because your friend down the street might be receiving something different. And so this really gives you something all in one place that shows you what goes into each waiver. And then the companion piece to it on the next page shows you how the settings rule applies to that specific waiver. This is an important part of the book. It really is a flowchart, a visualization of how the system works for you when you come off the wait list and go into services. So up there at number 1, you're called, you get the great news, you're off the wait list. Then you work with your DSPD transition coordinator. You do all of those assessments, the UCANs, and then you go into finding a support coordinator. You get to choose whether or not you want to do self-administered services, SAS, or a provider model, or a combination of both. And we really walk you through it. And then we show you Ben's case study of how he went through this whole process. And even if you've been in services, it's really good to go through and remind yourself of how this works, because maybe there's something you want to tweak. Maybe there's something that's not working for you that you want to switch up. And so this is just a reminder of everything that's available to you. That schedule of services, you, based upon your UCANs or your assessment, then your DSPD transition coordinator gives you the schedule of services. And so this is just a sample. There's a lot of services available to you, and it's based upon your needs, not necessarily, like I said, what your neighbor has down the street. It's really what's going to help you to be more independent. And so that schedule of services is important. We do a deep dive in the book on that so you can really understand the process. And it's not the transition coordinator dictating something to you. You are really an active participant and involved in the process. We also go through and do a deep dive on service codes. It's, confusing. What does a BC1 and what's an SL3 and all of these different codes. And so we take each code and we break it down and we show you what is offered through that code, and also talking about budgets and units and how your budget will work for you throughout the year, what piece the fiscal agent plays in the process and how you work with them. There's pros and cons to each model. And so we break those down for you so you can see everything next to each other and think, okay, how is this going to work for my son? How is this going to work for me with my job? What's going to be the best option? And it's really important to know that you can change these things at any time, and that you can use a combination of services and different models based upon what's working for you at that moment. And like Lisa Wade said earlier, or maybe it was in a different training, things can always change. Your life changes, your health changes. And so it's important to make these waivers adapt and work for you at that time. We go through and talk about the great importance of your support coordinator and how they can be your best friend. You're not bothering them when you call them and ask for something. They love to hear from you, and it's their job. And so we give you all of the options about how to find a good one, what to look for, maybe what are some red flags, how to interview them. We also talk about providers. What are red flags, green flags? What are questions that you can ask? If you have a grievance process with either of those individuals or several of them, there's people to talk to. There's always something that can be done. We also talk about things like dignity of risk. I know as a mama bear of Jackson for 22 years, I'm used to calling the shots. And so I need to give Jackson the opportunity to make mistakes and to have opportunities to investigate his community. So we talk about the difference between guardianship and also that dignity of risk, also staffing options with community group staffing and ways that helps Jackson and build his community. We also talk and go through several pages, and I'm just doing this really fast. I have like 1 minute. But the person-centered support plan and how important it is. This is so key. This is your key to making your life look the way you want it to look. So up at the top, we start with that meeting. We look at the plan and we identify and make sure that all the needs are being met in the plan. We look at person-centered support planning tools and making sure all of the different measures for the quality of life are indicated in the plan. Education, employment, if there are restrictions that need to be placed, that they're noted, and that there's modifications so that the person can still live the way that they want to live, and everything's done in a very legal and transparent way. And then the last section of the book, the last slide, is all of these other things that we talk about in the book. Like I said, it's 100 pages. ABLE accounts, ways that your loved one can save their money and use it for the services they need. All the complications that go with SSI. What is a representative payee? How do I stay eligible? How do I stay under that $2,000 a month? How does caregiver compensation work for all of this? What about room and board? The UWIPs, how that's a great tool. So Jackson works at McDonald's and he could still receive his benefits and still keep his job at McDonald's. My case and my steps and all of these acronyms and the definitions that are covered within waiver services. So if you have questions about it, please reach out to me. I'm going to put a link in the chat in just a minute, and there's ways for you to leave me comments. So what you'll do is just click on the link to the book, and then you'll highlight a paragraph that you see. And if there's something about that you like or don't like, or it's confusing, there'll be a little comment tool that will pop up when you highlight the paragraph, and you can leave me a tool. So it's been fun. People that were on the call this morning have been leaving me comments in the book, and then we're going to publish it next week on the Utah Parrot Center website. So make sure you're on our email list, and we will get you the published link as soon as it's ready. So there we go. Thanks, Angie, for this time.
Hey, Jenny, I'm just going to go ahead and throw out a question. If someone is not on your email list and wants to be, how can they get on your email list?
Yes, good question. Just go to utahparentcenter.org, and I will put that in the chat as well. And just scroll to the bottom, and there's a place where you can join our email list.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks so much for that presentation and all the time that you have put into just developing this resource for families. It's so valuable to have like peers that have this lived experience providing this. So thank you for all of that work. Now we'll go ahead and go to our question and answers. We had a few questions submitted ahead of time, so we'll go ahead and start with those questions, and we'll get to the questions that have come up today as well. The first one is there funding for my daughter to attend tech school for training, even though she's failed previous attempts at employment? So I'm going to hand this off to Bryn Peterson to answer.
Thanks, Angie. That's a great question. So the first part of this answer is we don't pay directly for any tuition or costs connected to a trade school or university. But we do, however, have quite a few person-centered planning tools that can help to talk about employment goals and what that future for education would look like, as well as assessments that we can help with to plan for what that future needs to be. Almost every trade school, community college, university has a disability resource center, and that would be probably the first place to check if you're looking for supports for a person who's attending there. And then additionally, vocational rehabilitation has a track where they'll help to pay for costs and tuition and support for education as a way to help the person continue their career and reach their employment goals. So we'll add a link to the chat for how to connect with your local VR office. If you don't know vocational rehabilitation, that is, if you don't know where that is, there's a toll-free number and there's an office map there as well. But never fear, there's lots of options out there.
Thanks, Bryn. Our next question is, what is DSPD doing to hold agencies to things they agree to? Things that they say they can and will do at an intake meeting, for example, and then just fail to do them or offer excuses, rationalizations, and explanations. So there are a couple of things. First, the Office of Services Review does an audit of every single contract every year to assess their contract performance. They also do a sample of unannounced site visits so that they can talk to people, see how things are going, and see what is happening. A family or a person we serve can also contact our constituent representatives at dspd@utah.gov. Our constituent reps, they can help you address concerns with the agency that's supporting you and your family. They also work closely with the Office of Services Review to address any concerns that are related to contract performance. And then just please know that people can change their services at any time. A contractor must give a 30-day notice to help assure continuity and maintenance of services for people. Families and people we serve do not have that requirement. It's a contractual requirement. Another question that came in ahead of time is, what can you do if your support coordinator doesn't put the things in the person-centered support plan that you expressed and wanted included in the plan and the goals? So this is a really good question, and it's just heightened our awareness. One thing that we're going to evaluate is the timing of when the person-centered plan is, when you're signing that signature page, to assure that you're seeing the plan ahead of time so that it truly is what you're agreeing to. Also, if you need to work through any resolutions with your support coordinator, please reach out to our constituent representatives. If you have contract concerns, you can reach out to our Office of Services Review at OQ. I think I must have given the wrong email earlier. It's been fixed and it's being shared. It's osrprovider@utah.gov. Also, the next question is it possible for families and individuals to have access to exactly what the agencies are accountable to do? It is, and these contracts are open like continuously. You'd be able to go on and see what is in those contracts, but I'm also recognizing that's probably not the easiest way for a family to be able to access and see exactly what a support coordinator or a provider or a host home are responsible for. So I do think one thing we need to do is get some input from families and look at how things are structured to make sure we're finding a way for that to be easy for a family to see and know what to expect. So thank you for that question. It is something we'll need to work on. We've had a couple more questions come in during this meeting. The first one is about caregiver compensation. It says, when will these changes will take place? Does the comp end in June? And then what will happen? So we have Joseph Ambernack here. He's with our Medicaid team. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to him for a minute.
Thanks, Angie, and good evening, everybody. Regarding caregiver compensation, we do have some additional flexibility, as Angie mentioned, with the public health emergency. Our waiver authorities allow us to go for an additional 6 months after the end of the public health emergency through what's called our Appendix K. We are actively working on those adjustments to caregiver compensation policy. We'll be submitting those very shortly. And our intention is to have those changes in place for November 1st at the latest to make sure that we're able to move from one to the other. So there shouldn't be a lapse in the benefit, assuming all of that timing works correctly, and we have no reason to believe it won't. So.
Thank you. The next question is also for you, Joseph. It says, why should I be eager to leave the MCCW program, so that's the Medically Complex Children's Waiver, for DSPD? I worry that the new insurance won't cover diapers that actually work, that we had to fight for, and other benefits.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that I recommend having with your case manager for the waiver, and we can involve individuals from both programs so that you can make an informed choice. I mean, the short answer is really that because of either co-occurring conditions or because of some of those complexities with your family member, you're eligible for multiple programs, and you have the ability to choose which one meets your needs best. The Medically Complex Children's Waiver does have a little bit more emphasis on the medical side, where certainly the programs operated by DSPD do offer a lot of behavioral support and support for individuals with intellectual disability. So it does amount to which program, which service array you think will best meet your family's needs. And then certainly along the way, regardless with your coverage concerns, you will have help from us trying to navigate some of those problems. I know that can be a little bit daunting at times, but we and your case manager or support coordinator are here to help navigate those problems for you. But really, it does amount to, we have programs that are identified for individuals with very unique needs, and you happen to qualify for more than one of them at this time. But let us know how we can help you make the best informed decision for the care that you need.
Thank you, Joseph. Those are all the questions that we have currently. I'll go ahead and just give you a minute or two if you're kind of pondering, formulating a question so that I don't cut you off while you're thinking about it. And feel free to raise your hand too.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Yes, and I guess private callers really just need to jump in.
Okay.
If you're on the phone, you have a way to raise your hand. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I don't always get a chance to take these meetings because I'm always working or something. But I wanted to apply for the caregiver compensation, but I couldn't. So I didn't quite understand. Is it going to continue or is it going to end?
It will continue. We do anticipate it will change some. It'll probably look a little bit different when we get it approved as an ongoing service in the waiver, not just in response to the public health emergency, but it will still continue in the meantime.
Can I still apply for it then?
Yeah, so you would, if you're in services, you would just work with your support coordinator to identify the services that are going to best support your family, and work to get those in place.
Okay, and then the other one was you said something about the 30-day thing about the services, and I couldn't quite hear some of it. Some of it was cutting out.
So families can change, like, so if someone receiving services isn't having their needs met, or just really for any reason, they're like, I'm ready for a change, they can change their service provider, their support coordination company at any time. We do require anyone who contracts with us to give a 30-day notice, because it's very important to make sure there is continuity of care and people don't go without services. So while contractors are required to give 30 days, people we serve don't have that obligation. They can just change at any time they need or want.
And I just want to say thank you for the services we've been getting, because it's allowed me to finally do something I haven't been able to do, which has helped to get me a pension, and I've had to stop working over and over to take care of my child. So I don't know if a lawmaker will hear this, but I want to say thank you for moving other people off the list. And did I hear you say 375 people are coming off the list? And thank you again for the funding.
I would have to double check, and I would just encourage you to, if you have a chance, to reach out to your legislator or anyone on the Social Services Appropriations Subcommittee as well. The leaders on that committee are Representative Ward and Senator Anderegg. I do know that it is meaningful when they hear from their constituents and from people how their decisions have a positive impact on them. It definitely makes a difference. So if you have a chance to do that, I would encourage that too.
Okay, I'm looking at the list now. I have to run, and thank you guys again. And finally, for a lot of us parents, having you guys do this at different times makes a huge difference. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye.
Hello?
Hello? Go ahead.
Hi, I'm another one who's called in. May I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So we just moved back. We used to live in another city here in southern Utah. And I think back then I was on the list for something. I don't remember. And we've been gone for 5 years and we just moved back. And so how would I go about finding if for some reason my kids were still on the list? Or, I mean, would they still be on the list, or would they,
Let me, Jamie Douglas, she's like our expert in all things like waiting list, applying for services, eligibility. So I'm going to.
And then I also am not sure what the caregiver compensation is.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and have Jamie tackle the first question.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
If you were on the waiting list before and you didn't move out of state, unless you didn't respond to a survey, you would still be on that waiting list. I'll put my information. Oh, I guess you can't see that because you're on the phone. Can I give you my information and you can give me a call and I can help look that up for you directly?
Sure, that'd be great. And I did move out of state at the time. So it's a big mistake, the state that I moved to.
Well, we can
Okay,
work
I'm ready.
back on the waiting list if that's what needs to happen. My number is 385.
Okay.
321.
Okay.
4457.
Okay. And I have older children. Thank you, by the way. I have older children, a 17-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 20-year-old who have more significant disabilities like One has severe, and then one has higher functioning, and then one has kind of middle range, I guess, where he can pass like most standardized tests, but he has issues. Like he'll probably be one that needs a job coach. So I did reach out to vocational rehab for my 20-year-old, and then once I get him established, I'll probably also do that for my 17-year-old.
And then your next question on caregiver compensation. So during the public health emergency, we were allowed to adjust our waiver to be able to meet people's needs in response to the emergency. One of the ways we did that was to allow a parent, guardian, or spouse to be compensated to provide the service where typically we would have paid for a contracted provider to come in and provide the service, or a family would have hired someone through a self-administered services model. So during the public health emergency, we've been able to pay family members, like the parent, guardian, and spouse, based on the need of the person. And that's been a temporary service, and just recently has been changed. So it's a service that's going to be in our waivers, that would allow a family member to provide the service. We've also been able to utilize it for people who are on the waiting list when they get one-time services. For people who are getting funding through like the respite program, respite is the option. Our other one-time programs have a little more flexibility around using caregiver compensation and some other one-time services to help provide supports. So that's what the caregiver compensation is.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know if Jamie or Joseph feel like there's anything I misspoke on, need to clarify anything.
I don't think so, but there is another tangential question in chat about an individual where their daughter is on the waiting list and providing care for them, and how can they apply for caregiver compensation?
So this would come down to our one-time waiting list services. And Jamie, it looks like you came off of mute and are ready.
Yeah, I was typing, but I'm not fast enough. I was just going to say that caregiver compensation for people on the waiting list can be offered through those temporary programs that we talked about a little bit. So the ARPA funding allows for caregiver comp. We will have a respite only option that will start in July that will not offer caregiver compensation. But typically when we do any kind of one-time services for the waiting list, caregiver comp will be an option now and in the future.
Thank you, Jamie. Yes, Martha.
Hi. I'm wondering on the respite, is there, like I have a 16-year-old grandson we're raising, and I'm 77. My husband's going to be 79 this year. And we're wondering about, we never leave him. In fact, with the respite program we've had with medically complex children's waiver, we've never made the 13 hours a month. But more what we're looking at is like how we could get away for a week. Like, is there a host home or something that would allow our boy to be well taken care of? He's non-ambulatory and non-verbal, and so forth. He's pretty severely disabled, but he's got a G tube and he's easy to take care of, and that's why we've been able to do it so long. But we wonder if there's anything like that available.
So with the medically complex children's waiver, I'm going to refer that one to Joseph. I think he probably has the best knowledge of everyone on this call.
Yeah, the unfortunate piece is we know that kind of the availability of respite on the medically complex children's program is very limited. You're aware, obviously, of the 13 hours per month. And there is really only one pediatric respite facility that has been licensed in the state so far. And they are in the Wasatch Front. So if you're not quite in that area, it doesn't help too much. And the 13 hours still are a very limited benefit. And I believe you had the question earlier as well, where you possibly have the choice between the community supports waiver and DSPD services versus the medically complex children's waiver. The array of services that DSPD does offer on that side are greater, and the service limits are not the same that you would be experiencing there. So that might be part of the conversation for us to sit down with together with your MCCW case manager, and maybe bring in some folks from DSPD to help kind of figure out what needs are most pressing for your family, for your grandson, and how we can help you all prepare perhaps for the future as well. MCCW does have the age cutoff at age 19 as well, where and it will just be the respite benefit that leaves at that point. His remaining disability Medicaid coverage will still remain intact. But yeah, we might want to talk a little bit more about kind of what your family's needs are and how we can
17, and they told me he will definitely come off the waiting list this year.
Okay.
I think the last I talked to him, he was like number 60.
Okay.
It's probably moved up since then. But if we were under your program, would there be like a host home that could take him for a week at a time, to where we possibly could, like do a vacation with our other kids? He's gotten bigger, and it's difficult to travel with him now. It's difficult for my husband to lift him away from home, because we've got everything we need here. We've got the ceiling lift. We've got everything, but not when we travel.
So families have been able to take vacations, and it kind of varies how people end up getting services set up. Sometimes they're able to find a provider who can do like a week of services. Sometimes they'll hire their own staff through self-administered services to be able to come in and provide services while they're gone. So
It's really hard to find anybody.
Oh,
Even the agency we contacted, like recently, my husband was diagnosed with cancer, and so the medically reserved program, or medically complex children's waiver, upped his respite to 80 hours a month. But we couldn't even find an agency that could help us with that. They just don't have the staff, and to be able to find anybody that actually could come into the home, or had a home geared for children like him that he could stay at. We don't have access to knowing who those people are. That's why I wondered if you have a host home of a family that can take in a child like this.
So I think, to Joseph's point, it would probably be really good to be able to just talk directly with you about what your needs are, and talk through kind of what options do exist, so that you can just so you can understand them best. And I do think it will probably take a little more detail and a little more nuance. So I think I'll just give you my information. I know Jamie has put hers out, but you could call me. It's 801-448-1782. And let me give you my administrative assistant's phone number as well, just because if I'm not able to answer the phone, she can also help us schedule something. Her number, her name is Nikki, and her number is 801-663-3575. So that way we can get together and make sure we're able to get yours, kind of just spend some time with you to answer your questions and figure out the best supports.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. And you're welcome to bug your MCCW case manager as well, and then we can arrange for the conversation that way, so we can sit down together. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point. Thanks.
No, you're good.
I'll go ahead and give everyone a minute just in case you have questions that you just haven't quite gotten out. I'll just don't want to cut you off. It sounds like someone took their phone off mute, but I'm not sure if you had a question. Katie, do we ever copy the chat? We do. So Lisa, we do post this. The whole meeting will be posted. But I don't know that it actually has the chat included. I'm gonna ask Katie about that.
What we have been doing lately is just copying all the resources from the chat into a Google document and then sharing that in the same place that we share the meeting recording. So that will be available on the website with all the resources and contact information that has been posted in the chat.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Jamie Douglas, I feel like this question is for you, and I'm happy to try and pinch hit. It says, what kind of behavior help is available for a 28-year-old on the waiting list?
So typically for any of our temporary programs, so at this point right now, ARPA is the only program that we're able to offer some of the different supports that the limited supports waiver also offers. So there's some behavior help that that you can pick from if you receive that funding. But yeah, that's kind of a hard question. I would say ABA therapy, but for a 28-year-old that isn't available, and that's only for people obviously with an autism diagnosis. There are a lot of different resources, so it kind of depends on what you're looking for specifically. I can put my information in the chat too, and you're welcome to reach out to me and we can have a discussion about other resources that might be available.
And I think for an adult, again, limited to autism, I don't think there are answers yet, but there was legislation passed to include supports, right? Autism related supports, even in adulthood. Joseph, I don't know, Joseph, if you have anything to add. I know the last I heard from you guys, you hadn't, right? You haven't kind of developed everything is still in its developmental stages.
Correct. Our healthcare policy folks are finalizing the policy surrounding adult coverage, although by and large, it looks like it will be similar to our coverage for individuals under the age of 22, in that as long as you're eligible for traditional coverage with Medicaid. So typically for a 28-year-old, that would most often be disability Medicaid. That would allow the potential to have an assessment and have applied behavioral analysis therapy performed. That funding, that benefit will be available beginning July 1st. So we're kind of just right ahead of that. But I would recommend perhaps reaching out to autism providers. We do have some resources on our website as well. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I have the address correct before I provide it. Where you can find a list of our enrolled autism providers, and you're welcome to reach out to them to begin that conversation. They can help with any assessment or any start to kind of that treatment planning process as well. I'll drop it in chat for you. And I'll leave my email for you as well if you'd like to reach out there too.
Thank you, Jamie and Joseph. Doesn't look like we have any more questions tonight. I do want to just say thank you again for coming. I really am grateful that we can all spend time together, both sharing information and answering questions, and just learning from your experiences. Our next self-advocate and family meeting will be Wednesday, August 9th. And just as a reminder, you can find the recordings from past meetings and information about upcoming meetings on our website under the Be Informed and Be Involved heading. Also, our Disability Advisory Council meets next week. It's a quarterly meeting. The next one is May 16th from 2 to 4. The public is always welcome to attend, listen, comment, and bring concerns. And we'll put a link for where you can find more information about the council. And just have a great evening. Thank you very much.